Welcome to Truth in Crime Case Files. This is the tragic tale of Smith Sterling, a well-respected local businessman whose life was cut short by a brutal act of violence. Smith Sterling was a 54-year-old man living in Santa Clarita, California. He owned a pest control company called Sterling Pest Solutions, which was well known in the community. Smith was known for his bright personality and his love for 19th-century Western art. He often visited local art galleries and attended art shows, where he was a familiar face. Smith lived in a nice suburban house with his wife, Clara Sterling. They had been married for 22 years. Clara was 46 years old and worked as an accountant. Their marriage had its ups and downs, mainly because Smith was very private about his personal life, even with his wife. Despite the issues and rumors of Smith cheating, Clara was always loyal to Smith. Smith was known for being kind and generous. He often donated to local charities and supported community events. People in the neighborhood liked him a lot, and he had a large circle of friends who admired him for his cheerful and friendly nature. Smith had a dream of expanding his business and opening new branches in other cities. He also wanted to buy a new piece of art for his collection. Just a few days before his death, he was excited about a business deal and was planning to attend an auction of Western art in Fort Worth, Texas. On October 10, 2021, Smith spent the day meeting with clients and planning his next business moves. That evening, he had dinner with his wife and their 2 college-age kids at a popular restaurant in Santa Clarita called the Old Spaghetti Factory. They talked about their future and their plans for the holidays. Smith seemed happy and was looking forward to the upcoming weeks. Smith Sterling was a successful businessman. A loving husband and father, and a beloved member of his community, Smith Sterling had big dreams and a bright future ahead of him. This made his tragic death even more heartbreaking. On the morning of October 15, 2021, at around 8 a.m., Smith Sterling's body was discovered by his longtime friend and business associate, Mark Stevenson. Mark had known Smith for over 10 years and often stopped by his house to discuss business matters. That morning, Mark was supposed to meet Smith to talk about a new pest control contract with a big client. Mark arrived at Smith's suburban house in Santa Clarita, located on Oakwood Avenue, a quiet street. When Smith did not answer, Mark found it strange. He knew Smith was always punctual and never missed a meeting. After knocking several times without any response, Mark decided to use the spare key Smith had given him for emergencies. As Mark entered the house, he immediately felt something was wrong. The house was unusually quiet. Mark called out Smith's name but got no reply. He walked into the living room where he found a scene that would haunt him forever. Smith was lying on the floor in a pool of blood. There were clear signs of a violent struggle, with furniture overturned and blood splattered on the walls. Smith had multiple stab wounds, and it was clear he had fought hard before he died. Mark was in shock. His hands trembled as he pulled out his phone to call 911. The emergency operator answered, and Mark, struggling to keep his voice steady, explained what he had found. The operator instructed him to stay on the line and wait for the police and paramedics to arrive. Mark felt a mix of fear, sadness, and disbelief. He couldn't understand how something so horrible could happen to his friend. While waiting for the authorities, Mark tried to compose himself. He checked to see if there were any signs of life in Smith, but it was clear that he was gone. Mark sat on the couch, looking around the room and trying to make sense of the chaos. He noticed Smith's favorite painting on the wall, a piece of 19th-century Western art, now stained with blood. The police and paramedics arrived within minutes. Mark met them at the door and led them to the living room. The paramedics confirmed that Smith was dead, and the police began securing the crime scene. Mark gave his statement to the police. His detailed account would later be crucial in the investigation that followed. The police arrived at Smith Sterling's house quickly after Mark's call. Stevenson called 911 on the morning of October 15, 2021. Detective Tara Howard, known for her keen eye for detail, led the investigation. She was accompanied by her partner, Detective Mike Ramirez, who was also experienced in handling serious crimes. As they entered the suburban house on Oakwood Avenue, they were met with a gruesome scene. The living room was in disarray, with furniture overturned and blood splattered on the walls and floor. Smith's body lay in the middle of the room, surrounded by evidence of a violent struggle. The detectives knew they had a challenging case ahead. Detectives Howard and Ramirez began by examining the crime scene. The first thing they noticed was the multiple stab wounds on Smith's body. It was clear he had fought hard for his life. Near the body, they found the murder weapon, a large kitchen knife covered in blood. They carefully collected it as evidence, making sure not to disturb any potential fingerprints. Forensic experts arrived shortly after to help with the investigation. They used advanced tools to gather fingerprints, blood smearsals, and other clues from the scene. They took photographs of the entire area, documenting the position of every piece of furniture and every blood stain. The team worked methodically, ensuring they did not miss any vital evidence. Detective Howard questioned Mark Stevenson, who had discovered the body. Mark described the scene he found and his actions afterward. His detailed account helped the detectives piece together the initial timeline of events. They learned that Smith had planned to meet Mark that morning, which made them wonder who else might have known about the meeting. The detectives then turned their attention to the rest of the house. They found no signs of forced entry, suggesting that Smith might have known his attacker. This information was crucial as it narrowed down the list of potential suspects. They also found Smith's cell phone on the kitchen counter, which they took as evidence. They hoped it would provide clues about who Smith had been in contact with before his death. Outside the house, news vans from local TV stations like KTLA and ABC7 had started to gather. The shocking murder of a well-known local businessman was big news. Reporters tried to get statements from the police and neighbors, adding to the tense atmosphere surrounding the investigation. Detective Howard declined to comment, saying the investigation was still in its early stages. By the end of the day, the detectives had collected a significant amount of evidence, but many questions remained. Who would want to kill Smith Sterling, and why? The investigation was just beginning, and Detective Howard and her team knew they had a long road ahead. The first person the police investigated was Clara Sterling, Smith's wife of 22 years. Clara, who was 46 years old, worked as an accountant at a law firm in the San Fernando Valley. She was known for being meticulous and detail-oriented, traits that made her good at her job. Despite her calm exterior, Clara was deeply affected by Smith's death. On the afternoon of October 16, 2021, Clara was brought in for questioning. Detective Tara Howard led the interrogation. Clara appeared composed but was clearly upset. She told the detectives that she and Smith had a complicated relationship. Though they had their differences, she loved him deeply. Clara revealed that Smith had been involved in a secret relationship with a much younger man named Adrian Cole. This revelation shocked the detectives. Clara explained that she had found out about the affair a few months earlier, and that it had put a significant strain on their marriage. She also revealed that Smith had recently tested positive for AIDS, which had added to the tension between them. The detectives asked Clara about her whereabouts on the night of the murder. She claimed she was at home watching TV and working on some paperwork. She mentioned that she had watched the latest episode of NCIS on CBS, America's #1 show at the time, and had gone to bed around 10 p.m. Her calm demeanor during the interrogation was notable. She seemed cooperative and willing to help the investigation in any way she could. The police also asked Clara about any financial issues she and Smith might have had. Clara explained that they were financially stable and had no significant money problems. She denied any involvement in Smith's death, saying that while she was hurt by his affair, she would never harm him. Despite her cooperation, the detectives couldn't ignore the motive of jealousy and betrayal. Clara's revelation about Smith's affair and his illness added layers to the investigation. They decided to check her alibi and look for any other evidence that might link her to the crime. The detectives also collected Clara's phone records and financial statements to see if they could find any discrepancies or suspicious activity. They wanted to be thorough, ensuring no detail was overlooked. The investigation into Clara was intense, but the police knew they had to explore all possible angles to find the truth. Clara's calm yet emotional demeanor left the detectives with mixed feelings. Was she a grieving widow or a jealous spouse capable of murder? The investigation continued as the detectives searched for answers. Next, the police turned their attention to Adrian Cole, the man named by Clara as Smith's lover. Adrian was a 21-year-old struggling artist living in West Hollywood. He had moved to California from a small town in Iowa, hoping to make a name for himself in the art world. To support himself, he worked as a gigolo. This was how he met Smith Sterling. On October 17, 2021, Adrian was brought in for questioning at the Santa Clarita Police Station. Detective Mike Ramirez led the interrogation, wanting to understand Adrian's relationship with Smith. Adrian was visibly nervous but cooperative. He admitted to having an affair with Smith and said they had been seeing each other for about a year. Adrian described Smith as kind and supportive. Smith had helped him financially on several occasions, paying for his art supplies and rent. Despite their significant age difference, Adrian felt a strong connection to Smith. He claimed he loved Smith and that their relationship was worth more than the financial support Smith gave him. However, he was also aware of the strain their relationship put on Smith's marriage to Clara. The detectives asked Adrian about his whereabouts on the night of the murder. Adrian stated that he was at his apartment working on a new painting. He said he had ordered takeout from a local Chinese restaurant, Panda Express, and had spent the evening alone. The detectives noted his calm demeanor but were aware that Adrian had a lot to lose if the truth came out about his relationship with Smith. Police also discovered Adrian had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, which sometimes made his emotions difficult to control. He insisted, however, that he would never harm Smith. Adrian's financial struggles and his reliance on Smith for support added a potential motive for the police to consider. To verify his alibi, the detectives collected Adrian's phone records and spoke to his neighbors. They wanted to see if anyone could confirm that Adrian had been at home that night. They also looked into Adrian's financial records to check if there had been any unusual transactions. Despite Adrian's cooperation, the police couldn't ignore the possibility that he might have had a role in Smith's death. His relationship with Smith and his financial dependency on him made him a person of interest. The detectives continued to investigate, looking for any evidence that could either confirm or disprove Adrian's involvement. Adrian's turbulent emotional state made him a complex figure in the investigation. The detectives knew they needed to dig deeper to understand his role in Smith's life and possibly in his death. The third suspect in the investigation was Rick Gallagher, a 45-year-old real estate developer. Rick was wealthy and ambitious, known for his ruthless business tactics. He had worked with Smith's pest control company on several projects, and their professional relationship had always been tense. However, there were rumors of a sexual connection between them as well. On October 18, 2021, the police brought Rick in for questioning. Detective Tara Howard took the lead. Rick was confident and composed, but there was a hint of nervousness in his eyes. He admitted that he and Smith had a complex relationship, both professionally and personally. Rick revealed that he and Smith had been lovers, something he had kept secret for fear of damaging his reputation. This was a shocking revelation for the detectives, adding another layer of intrigue to the case. Rick also disclosed that he had recently tested positive for AIDS, which he believed he had contracted from Smith. This news had devastated him, and he was struggling to come to terms with it. The detectives asked Rick about his whereabouts on the night of Smith's murder. Rick claimed he was at a business dinner at the Palm, a high-end steakhouse in the Brentwood area of Los Angeles. He provided the names of several colleagues who could confirm his alibi. The detectives made a note to follow up with these individuals. Rick's motive for the murder was clear: he was angry and felt betrayed by Smith. The detectives needed to determine if his anger had driven him to commit the crime. They checked Rick's financial records and phone logs, looking for any evidence of foul play. They also examined his interactions with Smith in the weeks leading up to the murder. Rick's behavior during the interrogation was mostly calm, but he became defensive when asked about his feelings towards Smith. He insisted that while he was hurt and angry, he would never resort to violence. He expressed his frustration over the situation and his desire to move on. The detectives left the interrogation room with more questions than answers. Rick's relationship with Smith and his recent diagnosis made him a prime suspect, but they needed solid evidence to link him to the crime. They decided to dig deeper into his background and recent activities. Rick's ambitious nature and feelings of betrayal made him a compelling figure in the investigation. The detectives knew they had to explore every angle to uncover the truth about Smith's murder. True crime enthusiasts, if you're interested in more real-life murder mysteries, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. Do you have any thoughts about this case or a case of your own you'd like us to investigate? Leave us a comment. Stay safe. On October 20, 2021, a crucial piece of evidence emerged. It was a rainy Wednesday morning when the police received a call from a neighbor who lived a few houses down from Smith. The neighbor mentioned finding something suspicious in her backyard, a bloody shirt. Detectives Tara Howard and Mike Ramirez quickly arrived at Mrs. Green's house on Oakwood Avenue. They carefully collected the shirt, making sure to preserve any potential evidence. The shirt appeared to be a men's size, and the blood stains suggested it had been worn during the murder. This new evidence was taken to the forensics lab for analysis. The detectives were eager to learn more about the shirt and hoped it would contain DNA that could point them to the murderer. The forensics team worked swiftly, and within hours, they had results. The blood on the shirt matched Smith Sterling's blood type. More importantly, the DNA on the collar and sleeves provided a match to Clara Sterling, Smith's wife. Detectives Howard and Ramirez discussed the findings. The new evidence cast a dark shadow over Clara's claims of innocence. The detectives decided to bring her in for another round of questioning. This time, they had solid evidence linking her to the crime scene. On October 21, 2021, Clara was brought back to the police station. She appeared anxious as she sat down in the interrogation room. Detective Howard presented the bloody shirt and the DNA evidence. Clara's composure began to crack. She claimed she didn't know how her DNA ended up on the shirt and insisted she was being framed. The detectives pressed her for more details, asking about her actions on the night of the murder. Clara's story started to change. She admitted that she and Smith had argued that night about his affair with Adrian Cole. She claimed that Smith became violent and she acted in self-defense. However, the detectives found holes in her story. The evidence suggested a premeditated attack rather than an act of self-defense. With the new evidence in hand, the detectives were more convinced of Clara's involvement. They re-examined the financial records and discovered that Clara had recently taken out a large life insurance policy on Smith. This provided a strong motive for the murder. The discovery of the bloody shirt and the subsequent DNA analysis were pivotal in the investigation. The detectives were now closer to uncovering the truth. Clara's increasingly inconsistent statements and the mounting evidence pointed to her as the prime suspect in Smith's murder. The police continued to dig deeper into the evidence against Clara Sterling. On October 25, 2021, they made a breakthrough. Financial records revealed that Clara had recently taken out a $500,000 life insurance policy on Smith. Even more shocking was a $300,000 transfer from Smith's account to Richard "Rick" Gallagher shortly after Smith's death. Detective Tara Howard and her team questioned Rick again. This time they presented the financial records. Under pressure, Rick admitted that Clara had paid him to lie about being Smith's lover and having AIDS. Rick confessed that none of it was true and that he had agreed to the scheme for the money. This revelation changed the entire course of the investigation. On October 26, 2021, the detectives confronted Clara with this new information. Clara initially denied everything but eventually broke down under intense questioning. She admitted to lying about Smith having AIDS to damage his reputation and make herself look like a victim. She also confessed to paying Rick to support her false story. Clara explained that she felt betrayed and humiliated by Smith's affair with Adrian Cole. Her anger and jealousy reached a boiling point, leading her to confront Smith on the night of his murder. During the confrontation, Clara stabbed Smith multiple times in a fit of rage. She had hoped that framing him as a diseased, unfaithful husband would help her escape suspicion and garner sympathy. Detective Howard and her team now had a clear motive and solid evidence linking Clara to the murder. On October 27, 2021, they arrested Clara at her home. She was charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy to obstruct justice. As the police handcuffed her, Clara showed little emotion, as if she had accepted her fate. The news of Clara's arrest shocked the Santa Clarita community. Smith's family and friends were devastated by the betrayal and the gruesome details of his death. They struggled to understand how someone who had been so close to Smith could commit such a heinous act. Smith's children, in particular, were heartbroken. They had lost their father and now faced the reality that their mother was his murderer. The community rallied around them, offering support and condolences during this difficult time. The police publicly commended the detectives for their thorough investigation. The discovery of Clara's lies and the financial trail had been crucial in solving the case. The arrest brought a sense of justice for Smith's loved ones, though the emotional scars would take much longer to heal. The trial of Clara Sterling began on December 5, 2021, at the Santa Clarita Superior Court. The prosecution, led by District Attorney James Thompson, known for his tenacity and sharp legal mind, presented a compelling case. Thompson argued that Clara's actions were premeditated and driven by jealousy and greed. He emphasized the life insurance policy and the payment to Rick Gallagher as evidence of her intent to frame Smith and escape justice. On the defense side, attorney Karen Lee, a seasoned lawyer known for her calm and strategic approach, represented Clara. Lee argued that Clara had acted in self-defense during a heated argument with Smith. She tried to paint a picture of a desperate woman pushed to the edge by her husband's infidelity and lies. The trial was emotionally charged, with Smith's family and friends filling the courtroom each day. They listened intently as witnesses, including Rick Gallagher and Adrian Cole, testified. Rick admitted to accepting money to lie about his relationship with Smith, while Adrian described the nature of his affair with Smith. The prosecution presented the bloody shirt with Clara's DNA and the financial records as key evidence. Forensic experts testified about the violent nature of the attack, contradicting Clara's claim of self-defense. The jury was shown photos of the crime scene, which highlighted the brutality of the murder. During the trial, Clara maintained a stoic demeanor, but there were moments when she appeared visibly shaken, especially during Adrian's testimony. The emotional impact on Smith's children was evident. They watched their mother's trial with a mix of grief and anger, struggling to reconcile the woman they knew with the brutal act she committed. On December 20, 2021, after 2 weeks of testimony and deliberations, the jury found Clara Sterling guilty of first-degree murder and conspiracy to obstruct justice. The verdict was met with a mix of relief and sorrow by Smith's family and friends. They had found some justice for Smith, but the pain of losing him and the betrayal by Clara remained. The judge sentenced Clara to life in prison without the possibility of parole, remarking on the calculated nature of the crime and the lengths Clara went to cover it up. Clara went to cover her tracks. The sentencing brought a sense of closure, but the emotional wounds were still raw. Smith's family expressed gratitude for the support they received from the community and the relentless efforts of the police and prosecution. While justice was served, the scars of this tragic event would remain with them forever. After Clara Sterling's sentencing, life slowly began to return to normal for those involved in Smith Sterling's tragic murder case. Adrian Cole, the young artist whose relationship with Smith had been at the center of the investigation, tried to focus on his career. He continued to paint and exhibit his artwork in galleries across West Hollywood. The media attention had brought both opportunities and challenges, but Adrian remained determined to build a name for himself in the art world. Rick Gallagher, the real estate developer who had briefly become entangled in the case, retreated from public view. His reputation had taken a hit after admitting to accepting money from Clara to lie about his relationship with Smith. Despite this setback, Rick continued to manage his business affairs quietly, keeping a low profile in Santa Clarita. As time passed, life in Santa Clarita gradually returned to normal. The leaves turned golden in the fall of 2021, and the community celebrated Halloween with pumpkin patches and haunted houses.